Hello, and welcome to the Fairhaven Church Parent Talks podcast, where we desire to equip and empower you as parents to lead well in your home. Today, we have someone who is a first-time guest with us.
I didn't realize it was your first time.
Not Caleb.
First
Caleb,
time.
you've been on here many times.
Yeah.
So welcome back.
Thanks.
And Levi,
Yeah.
this is your first time.
Never been on a podcast before.
Whoa.
First time
Whoa.
podcaster. Actually, that's not true. One of my
Oh.
buddies had a podcast he'd invite me on. I don't know if anyone even saw it, though.
I
so
don't
it's
feel
okay.
as special now.
Yeah. No, this is a cooler podcast.
This is
Way
a cool
cooler.
podcast.
Yeah.
So, Levi, you are the campus pastor at our Beaver Creek campus and
Sure.
also
Yeah.
overseeing and doing all things student pastor.
I love student ministry. It's so fun. But yeah, I hang out at Beaver Creek a lot, and we hang out with students. And I hang out with adults a lot, too, but adults are just old teenagers.
That's fair.
Sure.
They're older teenagers. I'm still a teenager in my mind.
Yeah.
Same.
That's my question for you guys. What age are you in your mind right now? I'm 19.
I'd say 25.
25. Okay. That's good.
I feel 22.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. See, we're all at different levels there. And it's not correlated to our age. Our age order is out of order in our minds. See, that's what I'm. So adults are just older
Wait,
teenagers.
so you're the youngest one?
I'm the youngest in my mind. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I stopped at 19. That's where I was like, yeah.
At least you're not like the oldest one out of the three of us and then like trying to
Good point.
feel
Good
the
point.
youngest. I don't know.
I don't know.
I still picked the oldest age out of the three of us. So that correlates. That correlates well.
Oh, that's funny.
Now that I'm 40. Yay.
Way to go.
I
That's
know.
good. That's awesome.
Yeah. 40 years of life.
You did it.
It's a great thing I did it. Yes. It's awesome. Okay. So I have a question for you guys. What would you choose if you had to choose one meal to eat for the rest of your life? Okay.
Pizza.
Oh,
What kind?
It's easy.
From where?
No, it just doesn't matter. Pizza.
Oh.
There's so many different types of pizza. Some of them, you can get like lasagna pizza, which is the Chicago deep dish. That's
Soup?
like, yeah,
Pizza soup?
You can get all kinds of types of pizza, but who doesn't like pizza? Come on,
Yeah.
You can get different toppings, different sauces of pizza.
Sure.
For sure.
I'd do Wagyu steak.
Top,
Yeah.
Straight to
shelf.
the top.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go.
Nothing better. Maybe some like mashed potatoes and gravy. Yeah.
okay. Wow. I would say pizza as well.
Okay, good.
That's
All
what
right.
I thought. So
That's right.
because my mom passed away when I was little and my dad was a single dad for a long time, guess what we ate? Pizza.
Pizza. There you go.
At least
and
4
mac and
times
cheese,
a week.
probably. You have mac
Yeah.
and cheese. Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you about our mac and cheese
Yeah,
though. We have
yeah.
a family style mac and cheese and I've never met anybody else who does this.
Okay.
Okay, tuna fish
Oh,
and green
I'm
olives.
out. I'm out at tuna.
So mac and cheese with tuna fish and green olives. And we would still all say that this is like a comfort food for us.
Gross.
That
Like,
that
all
to me
mixed
is
together.
maybe the grossest thing I've ever heard. But that's okay. Everyone has their things.
I still
Yeah.
will make it sometimes. If I'm like, I really am just like
Like-
craving like nostalgia,
Yeah.
I'll just make mac and cheese with tuna and green
Canned
olives.
tuna?
Yeah.
All right.
Tuna.
I'm feeling very judged.
I'm
You
not a
do
tuna.
your thing.
I have a funny story about tuna fish sandwiches that we'll save for another time. I'm not a tuna guy. That's
Okay, we'll see if you're invited back.
That's
And then maybe
Save
you
it
can
for
tell
another
us.
time. And if you want to know, I'll tell you. Or if you see me at Kroger, let me know. And I'll tell you the story. It's fine.
That's awesome.
It's good.
Okay, so we're going to transition to talking about what it is that our kids and students are learning this week. And so we find that the Israelites, shocking, they're wandering and they're continuing to be a people who is grumbling and complaining. And today, something that we'll focus on as a main point is that forgetting God's provision causes us to distrust him when we're in need. So before we get to today's lesson, I just asked Caleb if you would help us to remember some of the ways that we've seen God provide for the Israelites.
Yeah, so we've gone through Exodus, briefly in Leviticus, and now Numbers. And so some of the big things are God helped free the Israelites out of Egypt after hundreds of years of slavery. That was a huge thing that happened. We've talked a lot about in the plagues and parting the Red Sea. But we'll see he's given them food multiple times now. And food was just a big deal for them.
Was it tuna?
Yeah.
Sorry. I had to put that in as a callback joke.
Though we see God provide mercy when they're worshiping other gods, which is a big deal. And as in this series, we've seen he's provided the 10 Commandments on how to follow God well and love others well. He provides instructions on how to build the tabernacle so that God can be dwelling within or with his people on earth. And then we see him provide instructions on sin offerings for atonement. And so that's he's provided a lot through the last couple months that we've read through.
Yeah, it's like this constant cycle, right? Like they're grumbling and complaining. God provides. He's always providing, but we see the provision in a certain kind of way. And yet it's just this cycle that they're really stuck in. And we've talked a lot over the past several weeks, actually, about how we also get stuck in that cycle. But it's easier for us to see it in the Israelites as we're reading about them, but it's a really convicting thing for us as well. But Levi, we're kind of sitting in Numbers 13 and 14 this week. So can you talk to us about what's happening?
Yeah, this is really, it's pretty cool that we're at the start of a new season I would say it's cool unless you know the story. And then we're at the start of a new season for the Israelites. They're about to wander for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's because of what happens in these 2 chapters that they end up wandering. And so they get to just outside of the promised land, and they can kind of go in. And Moses appoints 12 guys to go in and see what's up in the land. He's like, go check it out. He sends them in, and they spend 40 days checking out the promised land. And they come back and they go, it's great. This is great land. Like it is flowing with milk and honey is what they say. And milk was like, it had great pasture land so that they could have domesticated animals, all this stuff. It's really good. All this stuff, it looks so good. Honey is like, man, there's like just natural, like the grapes. There's like this image that they still use today. This is wild. That they cut down some grapes and they bring them back, the fruit, so they still use this image, I think, in Israel a little bit, like it's on like their seals and stuff of 2 guys. The grapes are so big they have to like put it between 2 soldiers and have it on this big thing, and it's just it's a sweet land.
It's honestly what you would envision when God is like, I'm promising you a land, right?
Yeah, it's really cool, especially in these the Pentateuch Hebrew, like the early Hebrew books, where there's all these ties back. So it's like kind of some garden imagery that is used, and I just love that Bible nerdy stuff. But so they go in and they come back and they're like, it's great. And I just imagine this happening around a campfire, even though I have no I just imagine they're like wandering in the wilderness. It's a campfire. But I just like Caleb stands up and Joshua, and they're like, we should go. It's great. God's going to give us, remember what God just did in Egypt. We should go in and the land's ours. Like God promised it. He's going to make sure we get this. And the other 10 dudes that go in are like, no way. Did you see how big they were? They were so big. They got some giants. How do they have those? It's wild. And so they create this, they kind of get the people all going like, we shouldn't go in. The crazy thing that happens is they convince the people, let's not go in. And Moses has to talk with God about it because God intervenes in that meeting and says, I'm going to destroy your people and restart with Moses.
Yeah.
This is wild. And Moses reminds me of this beautiful thing in chapter 14 where he just says, he calls back to something that God actually says about himself in I think it's Exodus 34, so we probably talked about this a couple weeks ago. But he says, remember when you said, Lord, you're slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, forgiving iniquity and transgression. He's like, be slow to like be gracious to your people. And he makes this he kind of makes this argument to God and says, hey, if you destroy the people, then what are they going to say about you and like these people? And God says, you're right, I'll forgive them according to your word. Yeah. And he proves that he is a gracious God to them, but it's not without consequence. Yeah. And so God desires so much to have this relationship with his people, yet they rebel against him. And he's a just God, so there will be consequences. And he lays out those consequences, saying, you're not going to be, this generation will not see this land that is flowing with milk and honey and awesome. And like returning to the Garden of Eden, in a sense, it's a promised land. And and they're just not going to see it. So he promises they won't die. The crazy thing is they go, oh no, we should go in.
Yeah.
And the very end of this chapter that we're talking about, they say, oh, let's go in anyway. And then Moses goes, you don't trust God really already? That he just said, don't go in there because God's not with you. You're going to fail. And then a bunch of them die because of it. And they lose to the army that they won against not too long ago, that God gave them a victory over Amalek. And then a bunch of them, they lose, and then they wander for 40 years. And then this is the start of them wandering in the wilderness throughout the rest of, through chapter 25, I think, of Numbers, where they wander.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long 40 years. Yeah, which is, there's some...
So like my entire life I'd be wandering.
It's a long...
It's a long time.
But that like imagery is like, if you think about 40 days that Jesus was in the wilderness too, it's meant to be a trial.
Yeah.
You know, it's meant to be an image of a trial. And so as we go through trials in life, you know, we have to learn to trust God through them.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the message that he's trying to get. God wants us to trust him, but there's going to be things that will try and sidetrack us. And when we rebel against him, we need to return to him and then listen, you know, let's listen to God. Otherwise, the consequences that come from that, they can be pretty severe, and they're going to happen, you know. So
yeah, for sure. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the main things that we're really focusing on this week is that when we forget God's provision, it causes distrust when we're in need. And so that's what we're also seeing with the Israelites at this point. But we need to remember that we should obey God because he made us. He loves us, and his plans are always good. Yeah. They're always good. And so my question actually for both of you is, how can we help our families remember the times when we've seen God provide, so that in the hard times we can be reminded that he is trustworthy and he is good?
Yeah, I got a couple things. The first one is anytime a hard trial or distrust happens is to pray. And we can pray that, Lord, remind me of your goodness in the past so that I have encouragement going forward. I have hope going forward. Remind me of your goodness. So prayer is the big thing. My wife has a prayer journal that is a 5-year prayer journal. And so July 6th, it would say 2021, 2022, and each day she can go back. So like she's writing July 6th, 2025. She can see her prayers from 3 years ago and see how God has provided. And so journaling, praying, doing both at the same time is great. But also we talk about building deep relationships. And so the community that we have around us, if you've been walking life with a small group, or I mean, as parents with your kids, you're with them every day. And so you get the opportunity to be in their lives and say, hey, remember what happened 2 years ago when those kids were bullying you at school, and now all the friends you have now? Remember that trial you were having with finances, and now the way God has provided. And so having people around you to remind you of God's goodness is a great way too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I love like trying to find an intentional way to share what God has done in my life with my kids. I think what happens a lot of times, it naturally, like with my 11-year-old, mostly is that there'll be a situation that comes up and be like, I remember when this happened. And if I can remember where like God was in the midst of that, and we're kind of getting to the age where like I was kind of devoted to God where my kid is right now. And so just remembering back in my life and trying to find, I mean, I don't have to think back that far because I'm 19 in my brain, right? So, and my son's 11. So I'm thinking like, okay, it didn't happen so long ago. It turns out it was, more than 20 years ago. But like the idea of like, let's bring up what was happening in my life so that we can be in a relatable, honest, open, transparent, like, hey, like this is where I was in life then, and how I saw God and how I thought through this. So I look for those opportunities. I also try to find like intentional times to set aside. I don't think, unless I'm intentional to do it, I don't think I ever would, by just saying, hey, it's important for us. This verse just sticks in my mind. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, is just in my mind all the time. So like I just make it a normal rhythm to invite friends over to our house. We sit around a fire and I go, hey, what's God done in your life? And for us, that's been with students, that's been with young adults, that's been with people that we're just friends with. And we just want to make it a normal thing to talk about that. But finding a way to be honest about how we maybe have rebelled against God with our kids in an appropriate way. I mean, it needs to be an appropriate way, but like, you don't got to air out all your dirty laundry. You just need to say, hey, like I've struggled with the same thing maybe you're struggling with right now. And so finding a way to say, here's how I've trusted God through that, and maybe turn from rebellion to obedience. Just being honest about that in an appropriate way with kids. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to feel like this, like it feels bigger than it needs to oftentimes. And so just remembering that your kids are going to go through similar things that you went through, and it helps if they know they're not alone in that. Especially as you get to teenage years where they're going through some pretty heavy stuff and they're working through some things. We just, like my wife and I have made a decision to start that as early as possible with our kids, to just say, hey, like we just have to be honest about like, we're not perfect, if you thought we were, then they don't think we are, honestly. Like we know that they don't think we're perfect now. So, but that's what we're trying to find, honest, open, transparent ways to appropriately share how we've maybe struggled and turn towards God.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned like the need to start that early.
Yeah.
Because it just then becomes a natural part of your conversations with your family when you're just from the beginning or from young ages, you're starting to talk through those things. I mean, we've talked a lot on here about, even admitting when mom or dad has messed up and we need to ask for forgiveness and for God's grace in our lives, and just like sharing those times with your kids. And I think also being able to, like you said, walk through the hard things with them when they're young just helps build that trust too. So that when they are facing bigger challenges, they're like, okay, it's not like all of a sudden mom and dad are like interested and intentional. It's like they always have been, right? And so I think that's a really important thing too.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And I think like that doesn't come naturally for everybody, right?
No,
I know for me, I'm a super private person, like I always have been. And so I've had to try really hard, even as a mom, to like open up to my kids, which I feel like sounds kind of weird, but it's just like who I am. I'm a very like private. I was going to say like hidden, like more reserved and like sharing things. And so, but I've seen like the importance of that. And as my kids have gotten older, it's become more and more evident like how important it is that there's honesty and truthfulness, like you said, in a very appropriate kind of way.
Yeah. And what we're doing is we're modeling for kids, like it's okay to not be okay. Like it's okay to be like have some stuff. We have this so our dining room table, it's a place where we have strategically, and this is kind of an idea that we have in our house, but it could be anything. But we have a redemptive analogy, which is our table in our house, and we like sanded it down. We were refinishing it one time, and there's all this filler and there's like scars, just like people had like messed up this day and they tried to fix it. We got it for free, so we're like, it's a cool table. But I sand it down. It's got all this filler in it, and we'll sit around the table for dinner all the time. But we wanted it to be at the heart of our family, around our dinner table. We can talk about and be just people who you can see the scars. And know that we are incapable of filling them and hiding them. It's actually better if we're honest about them, and we know that Jesus is the one that fills us. So let's have an honest place that we can be. So like there's tons of ways to do that, but sometimes it's helpful to have like here's where we are honest and open, and no matter what you say here, like we're still going to love you. And so just setting that up and being intentional with that as early as possible. But honestly, like if you're just getting started in it, like you don't feel like you have to have this big moment. Just find a little way to do it. And even if you have older teenagers, like even just that little bit of just, hey, I just want to be honest about like I don't have it all figured out. That's a huge deal.
Yeah. That's so good. So great. So when we're looking back at the story of Joshua and Caleb and how I'm just wondering, Caleb.
Yeah.
This is your story, man.
It is. This is what I'm named after. I'm also battling some sickness right now, and I've got a tickle in my throat trying to fight it off. But yeah, this is what I was named after. Really cool. And a coincidence that I ended up being on this podcast.
Yeah. So how does this story, I mean, we're always trying to point people to like, how does this actually point us to Jesus?
Yeah.
So how does this point us to Christ?
Yeah, I think you think about this story and Joshua and Caleb. Like these people were told you're going to be given this land by God and this promised land, and they go and they do it. I mean, you've explained it all, but they face these like powerful and large, is what Scripture says. In ESV, I think it says giants, and NLT giants. ESV, they feel like grasshoppers. Like these are huge people, and the enemy can feel large and scary in our lives and feels like daunting and we can't do it. But God had given them this promise already. And so Joshua and Caleb walked out in boldness. And in our lives, there are things that feel like giants, things that are daunting, things that are scary. And because of Jesus' death, we get to walk in that boldness. We get to walk in that strength, knowing that Jesus went on the cross and defeated all of our enemies, all of our battles already. And in that promise, we have the promise of heaven. Our promised land is heaven, and it will maybe have massive grapes and flowing honey and milk. And but Jesus has already conquered it all. We get to walk in that promise.
Yeah. I love that. That's so good. So it's hope-filled, right? Like they're wandering and there's a lot going on in the story, but we know because we have Jesus, we know the promise. And we get to rest in the promise. And so that's a really cool thing. Parents, I would, as we always encourage you, make sure that you're reading these scriptures so that you can have great dialogue with your children, with your students, and also memorizing the scripture verse that we have for this series is really important. We appreciate you doing that and leaning in and leading your family really well. And I love that both of these guys have been able to give some suggestions on how you can continue doing that. So one thing that I would ask for prayer for today is we are at the Life Conference with 60 students. And so we want to be praying for those students that their lives would be transformed while they're at Life. And I know for both of these guys, Life is a huge deal. Life Conference. Life is obviously a huge deal.
Life is a big deal. Yeah.
It is a big deal.
Life Conference is awesome.
Yeah. So could you guys just give maybe one or two things that specifically the parents should be praying about right now for their students?
Yeah. You had a crazy experience at Life.
Yeah, well, probably one of the reasons I'm a pastor is that I went to the Life Conference in 2003.
2003.
Went to the Life Conference. I was just felt a call into ministry and responded to it. And so, that this is there's friendships that are developed there. There's so much fun that happens, but there's some core things about it that just are you're called into a real authentic. Like, believe in Jesus with all your heart. Don't let it be just a part of your life. That I hope a lot of kids get to experience. Yeah. And they have a specific opportunities to respond to a call to ministry. And I remember walking forward for that and just saying, man, I feel like God's calling me into this. And what an awesome thing to work for God's kingdom. And so, if you have a kid on the trip and they come home going, man, I feel like I was called in ministry, man, celebrate that because God's doing a work and will do something in their life that we can't know. I mean, there's a goodness in that we just can't know. We don't know sometimes the plans God's got in store for us, but we just respond. And so just encourage them in that, but just be praying that there's just something on my heart right now that's like, man, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And when I know that there's this thing that is happening, right now, it could be actually right now. I don't know what the day they have that, as you're watching this, it might be the day that they're responding to that. But man, God can call workers to build His kingdom, and I love that that's part of what the Life Conference does, and it obviously influenced my life in a huge way. So
that's so awesome.
Yeah, I have a vivid memory from Life last time 3 years ago in 2022. A student who I'd been walking through Life with for a while kept multiple nights we were having conversations like, Caleb, I am not experiencing God in the way I thought I would this week. He is not meeting my expectations. So pray that students would go in with open hearts to this week, or as they're at camp already or conference already, like that they have open hearts to hear from God in a way that maybe wasn't their expectations. I feel like students go into camps or conferences with like, oh, I'm gonna have cry night, and I'm gonna have these emotions and all these things, and it doesn't always work that way. And we don't need to have these emotions to feel God's presence, but the students a lot of times think they do. And so just be praying for students to experience God in a way that is maybe not what they expected and meets them in an amazing way.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so thank you for praying. Thank you for sending your students. Thank you for investing in them. There's just amazing things that are happening, and God is moving in a significant way. So thank you for your prayers. Keep praying for them and for their hearts. Thank you for joining us. So we'll see you guys all next week.